Hey everybody, Coach Sal here, episode 6 of the Thinking Body Revival. You can see my dog-eared copy there behind me. What we're going to talk about today, we have a bit of a departure from what we've been doing so far, is we're going to limit our discussion to how big food is marketing directly to kids. And as parents, grandparents, guardians, aunts, uncles, whatever, you should be aware of the tactics. I'm sure you are. Most people probably are aware, but they really don't understand the depths to which big food is going to kind of bamboozle you. And they're not doing us any favors. They use deceptive marketing. They do things that years ago the cigarette industry was banned from doing. We'll talk about that a little bit, but I'm sure most of you are old enough to remember Joe Camel and how the cigarette industry was prevented from advertising using Joe Camel because they felt that that was a way to get kids interested in smoking. They stopped it with cigarettes, and it's no coincidence that the big tobacco companies got into the food business, and now they're using those same tactics to sell crappy food to our kids and to us too. It's not just kids, but we're going to focus on kids today with the knowledge that will refresh in your minds, or maybe you'll be hearing it for the first time. You'll think twice and be able to look at these foods a little more critically and make sure your kids are getting the best food they could possibly get. All right, so that's it for the intro, and as usual, we're going to flip the clock. All right, everybody. So we're going to talk about nutrition today. And one of the reasons I think it's important to kind of separate this from the other discussions we've been having is what I try to get people to understand is you can't outrun a bad diet. Everything starts with your nutritional program. People have been led to believe that exercise can correct some of the things you're doing in your diet that aren't ideal, and that's actually not correct at all. It's absolutely the opposite. A bad diet is going to sabotage the time and effort you put in the gym. So we're going to focus on the kids today because obviously we're in charge of them. You know, my kids are now older. Hopefully I gave them as good of a base as they could get. We'll talk about some things you need to do from a habit standpoint that contributes to your ability to eat better. And a lot of that is eating the regular meals per day, which a lot of families get away from. I don't want to lose focus of the message here, which is that big food is targeting your kids, and they use a variety of tricks. You know, when I was growing up, you'd get the box of cereal and there'd be the little toy in it. Obviously, Captain Crunch and some of the characters that were used to sell food. Obviously, Captain Crunch and some of those other cartoon characters used to sell food to kids, to parents. That's not new, but it seemed a little more innocent, and it seemed like the food was not quite as bad, and it doesn't seem like that. We know the food is much worse than it was. Those same processed foods have gotten worse, more fake ingredients, more artificial ingredients. So we've progressed to where we still use the cartoon characters. The toys have gotten more complex. There's tie-in to digital games. All of these tricks they're using in this $2 billion industry to basically target our kids with what is basically junk food. We're looking at statistics that show 20% of kids are obese. It's probably understating it a bit. Not only is that 20% horrendous, but even for the kids that aren't obese, that are eating poorly, it's affecting their development in an extremely negative way. Your gastrointestinal tract is kind of developed during your first 1,000 days, your gut biome. So that's why you want to make sure your young kids especially get 3 meals a day, get good food in those first 3+ years or 3 years or so of their life so that their gut develops to the best of its ability. So we'll talk about some specific foods and family of foods that you really need to avoid. The first one was something that I had as a kid and as a guilty pleasure enjoyed into adulthood, which are Pop-Tarts. It seems like it's getting worse and worse, where now we have these Pop-Tart mini bites in different flavors, which use Disney characters on the box, which are these little bite-sized nuggets that kids can pop very easily without regard for being aware of how much they're eating. It's 15 grams of sugar per serving, which is about half of how much sugar a kid should get in a day. There's over 50 ingredients in these Pop-Tart mini bites, which is, again, a warning sign right off the bat. And these foods all contain food dye, which we're working to get out of the food supply right now. Now, these products all contain the dyes that contribute to hyperactivity and other health outcomes. And it's not even cake for breakfast. It's fake food for breakfast. It's fake sugar food for breakfast. You'd be better off making a cake with whole food ingredients and giving your kid that for breakfast. By far is better than these mini Pop-Tarts. An old standby kids meal, I think it might be the originator of the kids meal concept, are the McDonald's Happy Meals, which we all saw the commercials growing up. They had toys to induce you. It was the usual mix of McDonald's food that was designed to make it more appealing to kids, and kids saw the commercials and bugged their parents to buy them, and parents bought them, and it's horrible food. The most recent kids meal used toy figures from the Minions movie, which was a super big hit. That Happy Meal is 800 calories, 40 grams of fat, which account for almost half of the total calories of that meal are from fat. That's astronomical. And 1,000 milligrams of sodium. Now, I'm not a big fearmonger when it comes to salt, but I also believe that you should salt your own food. That's completely different from the sodium content in these prepared foods, these fast foods, which is the worst possible way to get your sodium or to get any sodium. 1,000 milligrams of sodium is almost the limit for a kid in a single day. So if you're feeding a kid multiple processed food items, multiple fast food items in a day, they are blowing through their sodium limit in a meal or two. One of my favorite no-nos when it comes to these foods are sports drinks. They're empty calories. It's all sugar water. Your kid doesn't need it. Real research does not indicate that sports drinks are any better than water. At the end of the day, if your kid's eating properly and drinking water and not drinking garbage, soda, juices, Gatorade, they'll never need hydration other than what comes from their basic diet. Up to 80% of your food is made of water. So if you're under eating, you're going to be dehydrated and you'll never be able to drink as much as you need to get yourself back to the normal strike point of being hydrated. So eat well and drink water, eliminate sports drinks and sodas and juices, and you'll be way ahead of the game. You will never have to worry about dehydration. If you're talking about any of these sports drinks, it's just sugar water. The Gatorade G-Fit berry flavor is loaded with sugar, loaded with artificial colors and flavors, and has zero nutritional value. And you're spending a lot of money for this as well. Stay away from all the sports drinks. One of the new tricks these food companies are using is they're tied into TikTok. They're part of challenges and they're part of other snack breaks that they're advertising. And again, its only purpose is to attract kids to buy this junk food. Nesquik chocolate milk has something called a unicorn flavor with a unicorn mascot. They're marketing a specific age group. To my mind, I'm thinking that's a real little kid they're marketing that towards. This is even worse than a sports drink. It's 22 grams of sugar for 8 ounces, plus all other artificial flavors. Whatever remnants of dairy are in that are devoid of any nutritional value. It's really just a great example of a horrendous practice and a horrendous product. The last one we're going to go with are our Cheetos Cheese Puffs. This particular brand of Cheetos has gotten push on YouTube. And again, that's another avenue for the food manufacturers to pimp their stuff. And it was part of a Flamin' Hot challenge that they had on YouTube, again, geared at kids. I don't know how many of you are looking at Cheetos videos on YouTube, but it's designed to get kids hooked. This food is tons of processed garbage, a ton of sodium. One of the ingredients is acrylamide, which has been linked to cancer for years and is one of those things that you scratch your head and you're like, how could they even put that in any food for any purpose or use it to make food for any purpose? But here we are, it's in Cheetos. Another food that has absolutely zero nutritional value whatsoever. When you look at all these foods for kids and how they're marketed, it's all following the same disturbing pattern. And at the end of the day, it's bad food. On my X account, every day I have a worst food of the day and have been posting daily different kinds of foods that are used and marketed to both kids and the general population. Forget what it says on the front of the box. That's all marketing hype. Look at the back of the box. That's where you get your nutritional value and that's where you get your ingredients. And reading the ingredients list should be the clincher for you. Be the information that gets you to realize this is not food and I shouldn't be feeding it to anybody. Not my dog, not animals in my yard, certainly not my family. All right? So we'll give you some alternatives next. So in this closing section, we're going to talk a little bit about the alternatives. And at the end of the day, you kind of have to take control over what your family eats if you're the adults. There is a well-known nutritional writer, Ellen Satter, and she has written a series of books that basically teach people how to feed their family. And her position is, in many cases, it's the responsibility of the mother, of the female in the family that feeds the family. And I understand roles have changed, and that's not always the case. So we need to both, mom and dad, men, woman, we need to understand what's at stake here. And you need to be aware of the stuff. And I'm beating a dead horse with it because in order to combat the flood of bad information, you got to stick to your message to combat that, which is read the ingredients list and read what's in them, and you're not going to want to eat them. And think about you're giving it to your kid who doesn't know any better. And that is where it falls upon the parent. I don't really have any time for the excuse that or for the excuse when people are going to say, I needed to get my kid to eat, so I gave him X, and X is crap. The kid doesn't know any better. The only reason the kid knows that this they want over that is because you've given them this, which they shouldn't have. And I've heard it for 35 years. This is not a current occasion. We have at least 3 generations of people who don't know how to feed themselves. Never mind how to feed their family, they can't feed themselves. Going back to Ellen Satter, that was one of her books, was basically with the higher percentage of eating disorders being associated with women. Until women understood how they needed to feed themselves, they couldn't feed their family. Now that might seem to be an unfair position, but reality sometimes is unfair. And now if we have a family where both mom and dad are responsible for feeding the family and both can contribute to the process, we have a better opportunity to fix things and get things better. And it's not being judgmental to say we have to fix it, that people are doing things wrong. By virtue of this food existing proves that people are feeding their kids crap and themselves are eating crap. One of the posts I talked about this week is processed frozen foods, and how when you look at the chicken with pasta, whatever the dressing is, whatever the way they gussy it up to make it appealing, there's no actual food in that. The process by which that food has to be taken through to get it from raw ingredient standpoint to the point where you pop it in the microwave or the oven to heat it up, it's no longer food. And everything that's in that ingredient list is a fake ingredient. It's injecting flavor and nutrition into what is dead food. And those foods exist because people eat them. People eat them, I'm going to say, because they're lazy. You don't want to go out and buy a chicken breast and bake it in the oven or grill it on the grill or do it on the stovetop. You want to have something quick and easy, and you think it's less expensive to buy all this processed food and this pre-made food when in reality it's not. And most supermarkets these days have prepared food that's not cooked. In other words, You could go in, and if you don't want to buy that piece of salmon and have to season it yourself, you could buy that salmon that has already got some kind of a marinade or some kind of seasoning on it. And it's not just salmon. There's all kinds of food. I'm using that as an example. You put it in the oven for 20 minutes and it's done. It's no more difficult than it is to take that fake food, lean cuisine, whatever the boxed prepared food is, and popping it in the oven. Comes to your kids, it's the same thing. If you want to feed your kids cereal, which is really not a great option, you could still find a cereal that doesn't have all the garbage and the sugar and the chemicals and the coloring, and make a better decision. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good, right? If we're not asking you to be perfect, we're just asking you to be good. And if you're good over time, you will be ahead of the game with what your kids are eating. There is certainly a time and a place where you're going to buy your kid a bag of gummy bears, or you'll let them have a Gatorade, or you'll let them drink a soda. But that can't be the norm. That can't be the only thing they have. That can't be their go-to. They shouldn't have that all the time, because then it becomes a negative. It becomes not only a net negative, but it leads you down a path of other bad choices with your food. So you have to be disciplined, and it's tough, and it's kind of hard to do at first. But then once you set up those habits, your kids aren't going to want to get fast food. They're not going to go for the candy. And if they have some candy, they'll take a bit of it until it's like, yeah, I had enough. I really don't have a taste for it. These foods are designed and developed to hook you. We've got this misguided attitude like we don't have willpower, which is why we eat these foods. That's absolutely not true 100%. What's happened is these foods have been formulated to trigger responses in us that make us want to eat more of it. So when I hear people say, oh, I have no willpower, I had XYZ, I had a whole bag of Doritos, I had a whole bag of chips. That's the design of it, everybody. The design of that food is to make you continue to eat it. And if you read books about the food industry, you'll find that this is the case. I talked about it on my podcast. There is a book called Swallow This by a British journalist by the name of Joanna Blythman, and she goes into how these foods are made, the processes they use, and how the chemicals that are in these foods that give it the flavor and the color and the aroma, it's all artificial. And while it might be based on a natural ingredient, at the end of the day, the vast majority of stuff you taste and smell and feel when you eat this food is chemically driven. It comes from a lab. So that's what I want to leave you with today. And again, I'm going to repeat this over and over. You got to read the ingredient list. If you look at that list of 50 items that are in your potential purchase at the supermarket, you're not going to buy it. Think about that. The Pop-Tart Bites, whatever the heck they were, have 50 ingredients or over 50 ingredients in them. It's a great example of how by reading the ingredient list, you can make the best decision for yourself and for your family. I have a buddy who says, how far is it from the tree? It's a metaphor for how far did that food item come from the source until you ate it. Was it a hamburger? Was it an apple? Was it a Dorito? Was it a frozen meal? Was it a chicken breast that you ordered even in a regular restaurant? They have quality restaurants that serve quality food. I had a salad with the grilled chicken breast on it. Okay, that's pretty close to where that food came from. It looks like what it came from. A bowl of cereal, not so much. Cheetos, not so much. These other prepared foods that are frozen and reheated, not at all. That's not food. And we could talk about that more in detail later. So that sums up today. No exercise. However, I do want to remind everybody to stay tuned after the credits. I have 3 spots left in my group session, and I have 1 spot left in my private training remote sessions. So take a look at those, and you can always get in touch with me on X. It's at Sal Marinello, and my email is coachsalm@proton.me. All right, that's a wrap for episode 6. Thanks, and I'll see you on social media.